Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Back in the early 90s, my friend, I will call him Lou because that's his name, was selling his RX-7 via an ad in the old print Auto Trader. It came out every Thursday, so that first weekend was critical for sales. The very first guy that came to see it on Saturday said he wanted to buy it after driving it. Of course, he had to finance, so they couldn't finish the sale during the weekend. Lou was worried about losing all the bites from the new ads, so he asked for a deposit of $500 and the guy wrote a check. Lou told the rest of the callers that weekend that it was sold and, unfortunately, didn't ask for their numbers in case it fell through. The story predates caller ID availability in my area by a couple of years, so those leads were gone. As you surely expect by now, the guy flakes on Monday and Lou deposits the check. Payment stopped. Big surprise. Sitting around my apartment, we schemed revenge. But all we had to go on was a check. Lucky for karma, there was a phone number printed on it. Our first idea was to write a little program to dial his number repeatedly from my modem. But that would be easily stopped and probably get us in direct trouble. Then Lou got a page from his work. This was back in the one-way pager days. You call the pager's dedicated phone number and it sounds a tone. Then you punish digits for the number you want to be sent to the pager. The person with a pager receives a number you entered and presumably calls it. Everyone with a pager made sure that people who needed to get a hold of them had the number for their pager. You'd see pager numbers in print and TV ads all the time for various services. Boom. Angelic choir sings. Heavenly light goes off. Lou's pager number and my pager number had the same prefix. Lou's pager number and my pager number had the same prefix. Middle 3 digits. What if we randomly dial numbers with that prefix and page them all to this guy's number? So we order a pizza, open some beers and start looking through the yellow pages at locksmiths and tow truck services to find more pager prefixes. We wind up with a dozen or so. After that, it's half an hour of coding in your old Borland C++. I put together a program that would cycle through our list of known prefixes and add a random final 4 digits to get a random pager. It calls a pager's number, pauses, then dials this jerk's number and throws a 911 suffix on there for good measure, which is something people with pagers understood to indicate an emergency of some kind. We start eating the pizza and let it fly. I was very picky about my devices, so my modem was a US robotics courier. You could set an S register to control how long it would sound each tone when dialing. Uber nerds like myself will keep tinkering with that to get it as fast as possible while still being recognized by the phone service. It was very fast. I swag it could run through 4 pages per minute. So this guy would get 240 calls per hour. We just watched it run and laughed really hard. We realized pretty early on that we didn't really know if it was working. So we wandered down to the 7-Eleven and called him from a payphone, just in case he could somehow trace it or the poo-poo were on a case and watching. A man answered and I said, "Hello, I got a page at this number." I heard an audible sigh and then he just hung up. Gold. We ended up running it for a few hours, then let it go quiet for a few days. Then we scheduled it to start dialing in the middle of the night every few days. Plus we'd fire it up by hand randomly whenever we had a party. We checked again from the 7-Eleven after a week and it went all to an answering machine, which did the rabbit tone at the end of the greeting to indicate the tape was full. We reasoned that the line was still ringing anyway, so we kept at it for another month or so. Eventually we got the disconnected warning when we made one of our regular checkups. I am sure he just changed the number. I like to think about that guy answering the phone after a few days of silence where we started it up. I can vividly imagine his response at that "Did someone page me to this number?" as he slams the phone down and then it rings again a few seconds later. Or of course coming home from work and having an answering machine full of random people asking about being paged. And yeah, we annoyed several thousand people in calling this guy by the end, but each of those people was only put out for a single call. A cost, yes, but a necessary one for justice. After seeing another post about a middle seat jerk, it reminded me of what happened back in 2004, and this is an unintentional pro-revenge on my part. This happened on a flight back after dropping my mother-in-law off at home. She was in her 80s and didn't like flying alone. So whenever she visited with my wife and me, I ended up flying down to pick her up and flying back with her to take her home. I liked earning the miles, plus I enjoyed it a lot because I genuinely adored my mother-in-law. Anyway, I had the aisle seat, which I always book, and the guy in the middle seat, who was there before me, refused to move his leg and kept his arm on the armrest. I get in my seat, but he's really pushing back hard. It feels like he's basically trying to take over the entire row. I'm pushing back too, but refuse to continue this the entire flight, even though it's barely a 75-minute flight. As a flight attendant walked by prior to liftoff, I purposely commented loud enough for her to hear, "Dude, stop trying to play footsie with me. I'm not interested." He got all flustered and moved a little bit, though not a lot. Fast forward to just after takeoff, the seatbelt sign is turned off, and they are getting ready to serve drinks. Now he's spreading out again, but even more than before. I unhooked my belt and jumped out of my seat and yelled at him to stop touching me. The flight attendant and the air marshal rush up to me as quickly as they could to see what was going on. While he's trying to form words, I tell him he keeps rubbing his leg against me and won't stop even after I tell him to. Before this guy could respond, the passenger in the window seat says he's rubbing up against him too. He gets taken out of the middle seat, protesting the whole time. He's sat down in a jump seat with the marshal next to him. The flight attendant comes back to me and the guy by the window and offers us a free alcoholic drink for our inconvenience. We both accept gladly. Free beer is always a good thing. About 20 minutes before the flight is supposed to land, the marshal comes back to me and asks if I wanted to press charges. I seriously thought about doing it but said no. I'm just glad he's not next to me and pushing up against me. The guy in the window seat said the same, and figured that was that. After the flight landed and we had exited the plane, I saw the middle seat guy in cuffs and a couple of cops talking to the flight attendant. The air marshal saw me standing there and walked over to me. I asked him what happened and he said the guy called the flight attendant a witch and a few other choice words, and she was pressing assault charges against him because he did make a threat of bodily harm. He asked me again if I wanted to press charges and again I told him no. The guy is already in enough trouble. As I walked away, I looked at the idiot and started laughing. Maybe next time he will just move. I didn't want him arrested, I just wanted him to stop being a jerk. He's the one who decided to make it worse for himself. Edit to clarify, this wasn't an armrest fight, though he certainly took those over. He kept spreading his legs wider, pushing up against me. Also, I asked the guy to make some room before I sat down, but I got ignored. Hi folks, I live in Iowa. My father is a professor at the University of Northern Iowa. We have a parking system at the university and it starts with A stickers for certain professors, staff, and graduate assistants. Well, technically we have a G sticker as well, but it's kind of useless and only given out in a lottery system. Below A is B and C. Each parking lot has a huge sign that tells who can park here. My dad, the absent-minded professor, often forgot to lock his car and one day he called me to ask if I had borrowed it. I told him no and he started to freak out. Background about me. I went to college for security and private investigations but was working at the time as loss prevention. I only lived a few blocks away from his office and knew how he would be raging and going a little off the wall at the indignity of having his sticker stolen. When I got to the building, I went up to the 6th floor and to his office. He was busy calling other professors, asking them if they saw anything. I asked if he called campus police and he said no. Facepalm moment. I told him that's where we needed to start because they had the tag number, and as classes do not get out for another hour, we should have time to check all the A parking lots. He looks at me and says, "How do you know this?" I say, "Dad, this is what I do for a living. People steal things and I track them down. I'm especially good at catching employees." We made our way to public safety and explained what happened. They said they didn't have the time to track it down, and I said no worries, that's why I'm here. We went back to the parking lot with the tag number and started walking down the rows looking at all the tags hanging from the rear view mirror. I found the car 4 rows over at 3 slots west. Dad called campus police and an awesome officer arrived and matched the tag to my dad, not his car. Class was due to get out in about 5 minutes and we elected to wait for the thief and confront him. My dad is the epitome of, "You're only worth the deeds you do and takes everything very personally, and is the kind of professor you either love or absolutely hate. We wait for quite some time making jokes and watching the students exit the building into the parking lot. I spot the thief first as he's walking to the parking lot, earbuds in, nose dive in his phone when he glances up and sees us standing around his car. He stops mid-step and does an about-face. I point him out to the officer, and the officer yells for the student to stop and talk. The student stops and turns around. The officer asked if this was his car. The student pauses, shrugs, and says yes. The officer asked him if he knew the tag was stolen, and he of course said no. The officer asks where he got it and what year he was. The student claims he's a sophomore and he bought it at the campus parking office. The officer says nope, impossible because you don't qualify for that tag. Where did you get it? He said he bought it from a friend this morning. Officer asked who the friend was and the student refused to say. The officer says he's heard enough and that he needs to give that tag to my dad and apologize. He does so and thinks he's free to go. Ha, nope. The officer then proceeds to write tickets. Illegal parking, improper use of a parking tag, possession of a stolen tag. The kid's face is going from white to green at this point. He asks if he can leave and the officer says no. The officer has a car towed away at the student's expense. I ask the officer how much that all adds up to, and he says that after the towing, violations, and impounding, probably over $2,000. My dad only asks one question. What was that kid's name? The officer tells him we all shake hands and go our separate ways. Dad and I go grab lunch and I can tell he's not letting this go. I ask him what he's going to do and he tells me he's going to send an email with the information to the other professors on campus, the dean of students, and overall just blast this kid off campus. I say remind me never to steal from you. A few weeks go by and I ask Dad for an update. He tells me that the student was expelled 3 days after the incident and that I did a great job spotting and tracking down the student and tag. I said, Dad, I might not be a rocket scientist or teacher, but tracking people is what I do. That's it. Good times. Dad, if you read this as I know you're a Reddit addict, we should grab lunch when campus opens up again. I have popped into the local grocery store to grab a few essentials. The store was moderately crowded, but nothing out of the ordinary. I navigated through the aisles, picking up bread, milk, and a few vegetables. As I approached the checkout line, I noticed it was longer than usual. Sighing, I took my place at the end of the queue. And that's when I first saw her. I didn't know her name then, but I'd soon learned she was the infamous Karen the internet always talked about. She stood 2 spots ahead of me, tapping her foot impatiently and constantly checking her watch. A couple of minutes passed, and the line moved forward. And that's when it happened. Karen, who was now directly in front of me, suddenly reached out and grabbed the hair of the woman in front of her, yanking her back. The woman, clearly in pain, let out a yelp. The entire line literally gasped. "Hey, what are you doing?" I exclaimed, stepping forward. Karen turned to me, her face flushed with anger. "I'm in a hurry, and this line is taking forever. If you're not going to do something about it, I will." The woman she had pulled was now rubbing her head, looking bewildered and hurt. "Why would you do that?" she asked Karen, holding back tears. Karen scoffed. "Because I have places to be, and you have a lot of things in your cart. You people are wasting my time. I deserve to be at the front." The absurdity of her statement took me aback. You can't just pull someone's hair because you're in a hurry. That's assault. Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh please, it's not that big of a deal. You should be grateful I didn't do more." At this point, other customers started chiming in, defending the woman Karen had attacked. The cashier, meanwhile, called for security. Within moments, 2 security guards arrived. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave the store," one of them said to Karen. Karen, now realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to play the victim. "But I haven't done anything wrong. They are lying. I was just trying to get through the line." The woman who had been assaulted spoke up. "She pulled my hair and hurt me. I want to press charges." Karen's face turned white. "You can't do that. I have a family and a job. You ruined my life." As the guards escorted her out, she continued to protest, but nobody cared. Later, I learned that Karen was arrested and charged with assault. I just wanted to buy groceries, but I ended up with a story to tell too. A few years ago, after changing jobs, I found myself in a new office with a new phone number. After some orientation training and other new hire stuff, I finally get to sit down and do the things. I get my voicemail and answering machine set up the email, and the phone rings. Good morning. Railroad engineering. Yeah. When can I take the GED test? Sorry, wrong number. Click. Rings again. Seriously, when can I take the GED test? Like I said, wrong number. Bye. This went on for weeks, 15 to 20 calls a day. People are screaming at me for not being the adult learning center. One day, an epiphany. This isn't the adult learning center? Nope. Do you know the number? Check Google. I did. This is a number on their website. Oh really? A little Google full of my own, and I dig up a few numbers and give them a call. They tell me that they don't maintain their website, and there is nothing they can do about it. And it's not their problem. I'm just going to have to deal with it. My favorite line of that conversation was, "What are you going to do about it? I work for the state. You can't do crap. Bye. Bye-bye." And you can imagine that bye-bye just dripped with a condescension that only hubris and decades of Karen Hook can muster. Oh hell no. Let's dance. The next day, good morning, railroad. When can I take the GED test? We give that on request. It takes about an hour and a half. Come on down. Oh awesome, how much is it? $10. Bring a pencil. We will sharpen yours, but we can't supply them. Budget cuts, you know? Nah, I get it. See you in a bit. Take your time. They don't like me telling you this, but if you get here before we close, they have to give you the test. See you when you get here. Thanks, man. See you later. Now, for those of you who don't know, the GED test takes a whole freaking day. It also usually costs upward of $100, depending on a state. In the state I was living and working at the time, it was around $200. As such, it was only offered at certain intervals. So as I was telling dozens of people per day that it was $10, took 90 minutes and offered on request, I'm sure that they were absolutely inundated with angry people with freshly sharpened pencils, waving their $10 bills and demanding the test that the guy on the phone told them they could come and take. Every morning I checked the website to see if my phone number was still on there. I also took the liberty of crawling around and getting the phone numbers for some managers. I was happy to hand these out when people called back to complain that they hadn't been allowed to take the test. Head back down there and asked to speak to random director and tell them that they called a number on the website and that is what they were told. It took them about 6 more weeks to change the website. For some reason, all of the managers' numbers disappeared from the website as well.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.